What is something about yourself that is completely true but that nobody will believe? I grew up on a tiny island. Unrelated to Africa. Nelson Mandela held my hand and walked me to school as his plane refueled there. Edit. Lots of questions on where this island was. It was Cocos Islands in the Indian Ocean back in the 90s. Lots of people calling fake. I wouldn't believe a stranger on the internet either. But I do have photos of me as an oblivious little kid trotting next to him like it's no big deal. Kid me had no idea that my life had peaked at that moment. All my family has pretty cool middle names, and when people are like, what's your full, I get to my middle name, which is Thunderstorm, and they just don't believe me until I get someone in my family to back me up. Edit. Since a lot of you what the other middle names are. Morningstar. Firefly. Honeybee. And Stillwater. Edit 2. I forgot to mention I actually have 2 middle names, the other one is Liam. Edit 3. Thank you for my first awards, kind strangers. When I was in high school, a random new kid started stalking me. Like following me home from school. I'd see him outside my house. He'd stand by my locker at school. He was weird. Told my counselor but they didn't really believe me. Told a teacher I was close with and he talked to the principal. They said they'd watch out. After about a week my boyfriend was pissed the school wasn't helping me. He confronted this kid and they almost physically fought. Finally, he got kicked out of school, and about a month later, less than 3 miles from my house, he strangled a girl my age, who also went to my school, and dumped her body in a field. In 1982 I met and had a long conversation with Joe Perry, the guitarist for Aerosmith, in a bar. I told him what kind of guitar I was playing at the time. He said he had one somewhere up north at a girlfriend's house but never played it. I told him he should find it. A few months later his new album came out and he was holding the guitar. In 1996 I jammed on stage with Tommy Chong. I can't tell faces apart and I can't picture people I know in my mind. Not even close family members. If I try really hard the most I get is a very blurry image. If someone changes their hairstyle, or if I see them out of the context that I usually see them in, then I can't recognize them. I married really young and my ex-husband ended up killing several people during our marriage. I had to separate from my daughter for our protection because he was still at large. After 9 years, I finally reconnected with her. People think I abandoned her, but as long as she knows differently, that's all that matters. We're safe and out of his reach now. And I couldn't be happier. Edit to add. He was finally apprehended 2 years ago. And immediately after I was reunited with my daughter. I didn't abandon her. We were forced to separate for our protection and had to move far away from our little house. I didn't know where she was and she couldn't know where I went. I honestly never thought I'd get to see her again. So just having her in my life again is a miracle. I don't know why he did the things he's done. But I take comfort in the fact he is now in prison and his appeals have been denied. May he rot in there for every single life he's destroyed. Including the childhood my daughter should have had. I switched my handedness from right to left and I am now left-handed. My dad did that. Granted it was involuntary. He broke his right arm as a kid and his teacher gave him no exemptions or assistance. So he had to learn to write with his left. Now he's left-handed with a hint of ambidextrousness. I technically kidnapped my would-be mugger. Bought him breakfast. Helped him through rehab. Getting a job and eventually was the best man at his wedding. He's been clean on the straight and narrow now for 10+ years. I never forget names or faces. Like ever. I realized this nearly 2 decades ago working at a telemarketing company. I never forgot a name and to this day can think of several names I encountered that stood out. Later I worked at a nightclub and one day this couple came in, we'll call them Steve and Mindy. We chatted for about a minute or two. 3 years later Mindy runs into the bar hollering that someone assaulted her boyfriend. I said, oh no. Is Steve okay? Dot. She looked at me like she's seen a ghost and I did think, oh. She's probably surprised I remember them. Later she asked how I could remember them and I just said that I never forget anyone I meet and have any substantial interaction with. I just don't forget names or faces ever. Almost 100% of the time they are permanently etched into my memory. Don't remember birthday or what day of the week it is, and after 6 years still don't have my plates memorized, but FCK it. If we met one time for 5 minutes 20 years ago, I still remember you. Weird but true. After multiple times going, I've never lost in Las Vegas. This is barely related, but you reminded me. The Science Museum by me has a machine that's supposed to demonstrate probability. It's basically a plinko board. A ball drops and bounces off pegs. And you're supposed to guess what slot it'll land in. I guessed right and refused to ever try it again because I'm perfect at guessing it. I can barely remember details past a few months ago. I have essentially no recollection of what things look like. Big events and things like that work fine. But details are gone, and half the time I can't tell if I actually remember something or I remember someone telling me about something. When I was younger I was river tubing with some family. Stupid me forgot to bring eye drops for my contacts. And one popped out into the water. Later we come to a shallow end. And this little girl finds my contact. Like, what are the odds? In case you're wondering. Yes, I popped it back in. Looking back I don't know what the bigger miracle is. Losing a contact in a river. And finding it again. Or not getting my eye infected when I put it back in. Broke my neck. Didn't know until a nurse was helping me with physio after surgery for a punctured lung. More info and the small chance people see this. Punctured the lung spontaneously. They call it a spontaneous pneumothorax. I have no idea how I FK'd up a vertebrae in my neck. Had a hairline fracture. Edit. Ha. I guess some people did notice this. The worst part for me now is not the neck, which they fixed promptly. It's the fact that in the back of mind I am still aware the other lung could go at any time. It's been a decade and I am still all too well of that fact. The comments below will explain how possible that is, because both lungs are often susceptible. These blebs are a ticking time bomb. I happened to look out the window at work and saw the end of a high-speed chase resulting from a botched bank robbery. 3 were killed. I have danced with a real-life prince. I was at the same university as Peter Phillips, grandson of the Queen of England, and he came and danced with me on one of my first nights out as a fresher. I didn't recognize him at first. Wasn't really interested and went back to sit with my friends who were like, "You do realize who that was, don't you?" Double quote. I've died once. I was hit by a car and was left in the street for 20+ minutes. My pancreas, liver and small intestines were ruptured. I broke my left elbow, left shoulder, left collarbone, right wrist, pelvis in 6-8 places and my skull. They declared me legally dead for about 10 minutes in the ambulance but were able to resuscitate me. I had amnesia for a month and lost the majority of my memories before the age of 13. This year was my 13-year anniversary of it happening. I'm mostly fine now, but I have a limp when I get tired. Most people believe I did in fact get hit, they just believe the part of me dying. Edit. I was also in a coma for a month. I'm part Mexican but I look like a Swedish man with curly hair. Edit. I didn't know everyone liked my FK'd up genetics lol, or they just relate, but I'm happy. My family ended up on the West Coast because Al Capone was rubbed the wrong way by my granduncle. He was murdered while visiting my great-grandpa's farm. I had a house with an indoor pool at age 25. Made $15K on the weekends playing blackjack in Vegas. I was retired at 26. And then homeless and bankrupt from divorce at 28. I can remember some pretty random facts that people will tell me about themselves or things that would have happened to them while I was there. I don't mention that to people because without context it sounds creepy AF. I have the same thing. And it really is a curse. I'm sorry I actually paid attention when you told me that story. Susan. FCK me for actually caring. I guess. I'm allergic to paprika. I live in Maryland. Maryland has this spice called Old Bay. This has paprika in it. The amount of people who honest to God do not believe I can be allergic to Old Bay is ridiculous. So much so one of my ex-friends who knew about my allergy invited me to her birthday party where all they had was Old Bay crabs. I had an allergic reaction and literally couldn't even be inside the house without it happening, so I just left. But her and a lot of people think I lie about my allergy for quirky points or something. Not even family believe me despite me having reactions in front of them or. I'm proficient at playing 8 instruments and can hold my own on 3 more. Edit. Answered a comment below with some background. Through life I have held steady jobs as an opera singer, forensic psychologist, waiter, cleaner and editor, translator, proofwriter. In that order. I have to ask. What happened that you leapt from forensic psychologist down to waiter? Not bashing. Genuinely curious. Generally speaking, that kind of stuff doesn't happen unless someone really hates their job or their lives took a wild turn. A whale hit me with her tail and broke my rib while I was trying to save her and her pod. 50+ pilot whales beached themselves on a beach I lifeguarded. I doubt anyone would believe me had there not been witnesses, the beach patrons helping with the whales with the lifeguards. I'm a completely white female from the east of England with a ridiculously rare genetic heart condition that's most commonly found in Asian men. It killed my father when he was 50 and is likely the reason my granddad has had 4 heart attacks and needs an internal defibrillator. Hooray for genetic fuckiness. When I was a toddler, I was in beauty pageants with John Bennett Ramsey. We were in different age groups but my mom has a photo of us together, tucked away along with the few trophies and tiaras I won. I can smell death. Not like sudden death, accidents or whatnot, but if they are sick, I can smell it. First happened when I was like 2 or 3. Grandmother had cancer in pretty much all her organs. I couldn't stand to be too close to her cause she smelled so strongly. My mother is a nurse, so when I was older I would go meet her in the hospital and it upset her how often when walking through the ward I could say who was going to pass soonest. She would say no, they are erecting well to treatment. They've got a good prognosis or they aren't fatal, so you should think that. You'll scare somebody and yet I'm always right. Also pets. There was a cat my family had when I was young and I knew it was dying for weeks. Then one day the cat took a turn for the worst and my mum threw me in the car to rush to the vets. Put the cat in my lap. The whole ride I was watching and smelling this cat get closer and closer to death. Vet was amazed based on how ill the cat was that he had been acting and eating fine the day before. I can hear some infrasound wavelengths and some sounds from something like radio lengths. When I have audio exams I need to lie because the nurse gives me weird looks when I say I can still hear it when she lowers the frequency under the normal range. It also makes it really hard to listen to someone in a public space or near a train. To clarify, I can hear low sounds no one else can. Yes, I also hear phone chargers and stuff. But hearing those high-pitched things is more common or normal among younger people. I am unwell. Mental health is that secret stalker that will attack you constantly and no one would know. Suffering with depression and an eating disorder is secretive and no one would be able to tell that anything is wrong. It sucks. Update. Reddit is the best place to go to find people who will support you, even when they don't know you. Thank you, kind strangers. P.S.C.A.K.K.E.D.A.Y.Y.Y. It's always that I was a serious alcoholic. I am a nice 29-year-old girl with glasses and 2 degrees. Heading to grad school to study psych. About a year ago I was held against my will in the psych ward for 6 days after drinking non-stop for 3 months. Whenever I tell people I'm in recovery they're like, oh. Like it's preventative? Or they compare me, without knowing much about me, to other real alcoholics they have encountered. It's annoying, but at this point I'm okay with the fact that I seem extremely innocent. Even though I'm generally not. My eyes over time have started changing color. They were bright blue and now are transitioning to a hazel. I'm 26 and this started when I was about 15. Apparently this is a rare talent, but I can raise one ear at a time. Cilantro tastes like soap. During the main life of Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 3 I was ranked 12 on the free-for-all leaderboards. I regularly played against number 2-7 and could usually beat them with a pistol. My parents never paid for anything gaming related and I couldn't afford a molded controller, but I loved the hard-hitting semi, so I practiced. My fire rate with the 5.7 was about 16 shots per second. I'm a white guy. I was born in a country on the east coast of Africa and spent a good part of my childhood in Kingston, Jamaica. When I returned to my parents' home country, I had a thick accent for a number of months. It's not hard to convince people now. But oh boy was it hard in high school. Someone still owes me $100. I can't learn mathematic formulas after basic fractions. I can learn them briefly and will forget them within hours. High school was a nightmare. I can learn things and become expert at them. And then days later I cannot remember one thing about them and seem like a fraud when asked about the things I knew about just days before. I realize that I have replied to a few comments on this thread about having slight versions of a few things. I think my brain is broken in some way. I am really good at remembering things that happened in a common day even 10 years ago. And I remember even the date. I also remember small details about everyone I meet. And it is unconsciously. My wife and I both look like we're in high school. We've had multiple servers at restaurants ask if our parents are picking us up, despite the fact we have both graduated college and live far away from her and my parents. Good genes. I look younger than I am. 2. Everybody always thinks I'm like 40, but I'm actually 51. My son is 22 and people always, and I mean always, ask him what grade he's in. Looks about 15-16ish. Drives him crazy. I said it sucks right now, but when you're my age, you'll appreciate it not. I was in Ohio while working for Bellator MMA years ago and met Dave Chappelle outside a Starbucks. He invited me to dinner that night and we sat and talked for hours with just a few close friends. He was every bit as amazing to hang with as you'd imagine. It was a wild experience that I knew no one would ever believe. I don't know if anybody would believe it or find it true, but when I was born my esophagus was not attached to my stomach, so the doctors had to realign that and reattach it. So they gave me medicine for getting an allergic reaction to it. I believe it was called penicillin or amoxicillin. But they also realize at the same time my stomach has a hole in it. So they end up doing another surgery right after the first one. I have a huge scar on my stomach to prove by. I don't think anybody would take me seriously. Sorry for the spelling, using text to speech is kind of difficult. I have hyperdense muscle and bone mass. I'm really strong and hard to break. But also super heavy. I'm 6 feet 5 inches. But normal build. And I weigh over 300 pounds. And I do not float. No one believes me until I either A. demonstrate the strong, B. weigh myself, or C. almost drown for the millionth time. I am a quarter Cherokee. But I am a redhead with pale skin. Grandmother was from Ireland on my mother's side, while my grandfather was 100% Cherokee on my mother's side. My father's side is 100% English. I knew a girl years ago who was almost completely Cherokee. Grew up on a reservation. She was 6 feet 3 inches tall with deep reddish brown hair. I didn't even realize brown hair could be that red. Probably that I throw up every time I eat food if I don't take gravel or a shit ton of ginger. My husband believes me because he gets to see it every day, unfortunately. But because I used to have an eating disorder, every time I tell a doctor they never believe it's involuntary, and I really do not want to throw up every time I eat. Like everything. Soup. Crackers. Whatever. It's usually very small. And I know it isn't acid reflux. Tried medication for that. Threw that up also. But it still just takes the fun out of eating. Princess Anne has seen my colon. Short version. She was visiting Alder Hey Hospital on the day I was having bowel surgery to have part of my colon removed. And from outside the theater, presumably on a monitor, she saw when they went snippety snip and voila. Here is Lord Colacube's colon. If people know I'm dyspraxic, they have a hard time believing I go to Oxford. If they know I go to Oxford, they have a hard time believing I'm dyspraxic. Yes. You can be disabled and clever. Who knew? I can read things instantly just by looking at them. Like if it enters my vision. Even for just a millisecond. I can remember what the entire thing said. This also works for things I'm not even directly looking at. Things in my peripheral vision get read too. Even when I'm not paying attention. For example, someone can put a paper on my desk with a soup recipe. Let's say I never look at this paper all day. But I walk by it once while doing something else and it was in the edge of my vision. I'll suddenly start thinking about a soup ingredient from that paper. Like 2 teaspoons of salt or whatever minor detail was written on it. Later when I look at the paper I will be like, ah. That explains why I was thinking about this random ingredient all day. My eye must have caught it even though I never intentionally read the recipe. I hate myself. I have a good life. My family is not broken. I'm good with people. Have a lot of friends. I'm getting good grades. From what I've been told. I am decently attractive. I'm pretty active and very independent. I don't know why. But I am still my least favorite person. I dated someone for almost 3 years and we never once had sex. I once fell off a 10-12 foot tree, landed right on my head and walked away unscathed. I only have one testicle. I don't understand humanity to the point where I can't get basic concepts and having a really hard time living without support of the people who know what to do. I feel like I am living on the planet with aliens. My brain also erases everything that isn't related to my main interest. Yet despite all that I am able to write plots that are enjoyable to most players who live through them. I was told many times that if I am so much disconnected from society, I should not be able to make up a good story or believable characters. But yet I am. I saw a UFO. And not just some faraway light in the sky. It was close enough that I could have thrown a rock at it and hit it. Lots of lights. Totally quiet and it maneuvered oddly. I've only ever mentioned it to a few people. You get the sense that people think you must be a little stupid to think it was anything other than a balloon or some other more mundane thing. It's like they say, you gotta see it to believe it. I can remember an evening when I was a child. Like baby status. Of my aunt graduation high school in the late 80s. I remember her purple dress, big hair, and my mother with a red shirt and red nails. Faces are a little foggy but I know who they are regardless. No one believed me when I told them as a teen, but I knew too much and there are no pictures of that day. So, I can sort of predict random events. I can't predict the future or anything. But like, I know if something is going to happen. It's hard to explain. But there were numerous times when I just felt like something will happen, a snowball hitting me for example. And then it happening like 10 seconds after I felt it. It's mostly something random. Like a ball falling into my backyard. But it always happens. I once guessed correctly the serial number for a StarCraft installation when I was young, like 12 or 13. Back when games used to ship on CD, part of the DRM was you needed a special code for each game copy. I was alone at my uncle's and he didn't want me playing on his computer. Long story short, I found the StarCraft CD and started installing on the family computer that didn't have this game on it. Only when it asked me for the serial code I had no idea where it was. Well, I tried a few things and got something to work and it installed. My uncle came home and asked me how I installed the game. I told him I just hacked the game. I'm 12. He didn't believe me but didn't do anything either. I look back at some of the strange things I've gotten right in life and this is definitely one of the strangest. I have no idea how I guessed correctly. I'm visually impaired. My ex-girlfriend was completely blind. We broke up. She faked a coma and a pregnancy by emailing me and many of our mutual friends under a false name with hospital updates. Out of a desire to be supportive and responsible, I went to visit her, long distance relationship, and she drugged me. Played me with sleeping pills and while I was disoriented. Played a tape, remember those? With a farewell. I'm going to kill you and I'm not really pregnant message and held a knife to my throat. Adrenaline saved me. Maybe something cosmic did too. She's now married with a kid. Just like she always wanted. This all happened over 14 years ago. It was also made into a documentary, in French, and the person playing me looks way too much like me for comfort. After it aired, I got a bunch of people adding me on Facebook. That's almost the weirdest part. In case you're wondering. Yes. This is the heavily abridged version. The full version gets really weird. Living in Arizona. My dad, who was a geologist, would take us gold prospecting. Twice. I found gold on the ground just sitting there. Once. I blew in the dirt thinking this would work to expose some gold. And it did. The second time was the next time we went back to the place and sitting in the exact same place. I literally found another small piece just sitting there. I secretly work alongside many A and B list celebrities. I'm in no way rich. And I don't like talking at my clients with friends. Honestly, don't really even think of them any differently than any of my other non-famous clients. Despite my total lack of social skills, I can read people like books and am really good at figuring out when people are lying. I am the exact same. I didn't even realize until I was in my 20s that all humans don't have the same ability. I can see right through people, and a lot of people, ones with manipulative narcissistic personalities, don't tend to like me as they know that I can see right through them. 3 inches of my backbone is permanently fused due to ankylosing spondylitis. Also due to ankylosing spondylitis, my finger bones are weaker than the average people. X-ray of normal people fingers are white. Mine appears grey. For context, I enjoy sport climbing and am certified scuba diver. I found a kid on the side of the road. Called the police, and after a night of craziness got the kid united. He was like 2 years old and on the edge of a busy road. I just happened to shine my lights in his direction. He was a second away from crossing. My mother never met my father. But I have. I was conceived via donor in a clinic. After my mother's death, I found my biological father and several half-siblings on 23andMe.com through DNA testing. I'm like mostly right-handed. Use the mouse. Right. Throw anything that requires power like a baseball or football, most things, with the right hand. But shooting guns, bow and arrow, fishing, darts, bowling, air hockey, a claw machine, even reaching for things, I do left-handed if I can. I still seem to have more dexterity with my right though. Like if I was to unscrew a tiny screw with a screwdriver or thread a needle, I'd do it right-handed. I went on tour with Modson. I played lead guitar in another band. He gave me an Altoids can full of weed when I ran out, and we smoked together the rest of the tour. Right after the tour I met Paris Hilton in a club in LA. I have been attacked by birds multiple times throughout my life. It's freaky. I have numerous strange and downright unbelievable stories about my encounters with birds. All started at age 5 when I was attacked by a peacock at a zoo and has only become weirder since then. I have also killed more than 30 birds with cars I have driven. They just fly into the windshield or grill. I was raised in a cult and married a millionaire, who was very much not a millionaire when we got married. Then escaped the cult. And moved 14 hours away to get away from everyone related to the cult. And my abusive husband. Fell in love with someone 15 years older than me. Got a job in my dream field, with no experience. Now happily living out my life with modest means. Oh. And my family disowned me for wearing pants. My pastor once tried to kill me. If you wanna know more, just ask. Very good friends with my pastor's son. When Cab Date Against the Universe came out, went to their house for a viewing party of sorts. They had a lot of food, including some homemade sweets. I'm deathly allergic to peanuts. Pastor's wife. Now, my name. Just a heads up. These have peanuts, pastor. Literally 2 seconds later. Hey. My name. You wanna try one of these? Super good. Here, have one. Attempts to give one to me, please. W. No. 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 He's allergic to peanuts. Oh. Sorry. I forgot winks. I'm just an average American girl. I have no special abilities or talents, but one time I landed a perfect kickflip on a skateboard. Of course no one believes me, but it happened. I don't know the first thing about skateboarding and it was 100% pure luck. I was a bodyguard for Julia Roberts for an hour. And X200B. Basically, when I was in college my dad drove limousines in his spare time as a side gig. Julia Roberts had come to town for a friend's wedding and my dad had to pick her up the next day at the hotel and drive her to the airport. He noticed in the contract the night before that the limo company was supposed to provide at least one bodyguard. So he called me up with an offer I was not going to refuse. This was around 1992 to 1993 or so. Right after she was getting really famous. So I went with him and escorted Ms. Roberts from her hotel room to her plane gate. No one ever believes me. But I always use this story for my 2 truths and a lie. I had a threesome with 2 redheads in the parking lot of a Catholic church at 3:45 in the afternoon. It was in the backseat of a 1987 Buick Skylark. Maroon interior. When it was over I got out to get into the driver's seat and they locked me out of the car and collapsed laughing as the priest and a nun advanced across the parking lot towards us. They finally unlocked the car and I drove off across the church lawn. I had no pants on the entire time. Also it was 1994 and I was 19. I've told the story to friends and they give me the "oh yeah I'm sure" bit and roll their eyes. It's okay. I wouldn't believe it either. I'm not sure if no one would believe this. But I have an intricate fantasy world inside my head. There are people and celebrities and locations. I act out parts and everything. Advanced form of maladaptive daydreaming I think. I can lose myself for hours inside my own head. I am an actual psychopath. And have been managing it for these few years since I found out I was one. I've been telling the truth without omissions as a first major step. And I must say it's been quite the change up. It was often very odd at first. Deliberately stopping myself from letting my tongue slip even a white lie. As you can see by simply having read this, if you have, that I'm also now taking an extra minute of time just to briefly explain it as well. I have a series of dreams that are so real and intricate that they seem almost like a peek into an alternate life or reality. They involve a few different places that don't exist. But when I think about them I can picture specific places of events. None of the places are overtly over the top. I haven't had any of the dreams in several years. My brother threw a flat stone as far as he could out into the waves at a beach. When it hit the waves it did so in such a way that it hit it while it collapsed, which made the flat stone fly directly back to him. He catched it. I have an inexplicable tolerance to OTC and prescription medication. Side effects don't apply. Everything from Benadryl to Vicodin or Norco. I've woken up during minor to moderate surgical procedures 3 times. I'm terrified to have a major one. Partially colorblind female here. In high school my biology teacher passed around some of those sheets where you are supposed to see a number in a circle of colored dots and stuff. She asked us to write what we saw. Only instructions. I wrote the colors of the circles and my teacher thought I was lying and must have heard about the lesson from an earlier class or something. I truly did not see the numbers in the circles and she called the guidance counselor to tell me how it's bad to lie because women aren't colorblind. She called my dad who sent me to the eye doctor. Turns out I'm also mildly night blind and have little depth perception in the dark. She believed me when I brought a note in from the eye doc. I can smell the weather. It's filled somewhat now but I can still tell what weather event is going to happen. Snow smells like a sharp mint without the mint. Rain smells like a must. Thunder smells like rain but with a weird twinge I can't explain, and hail smell like a mix between snow and rain. I sent my 4th year dissertation to Ted Kaczynski while he was imprisoned at ADX Florence. And he kindly helped me make it better. He helped edit it, suggested additional reading, and suggested a few talking points that I hadn't thought of. I ended up getting an A+ on it. Growing up, My teachers all thought I was pretty dumb. My 4th grade teacher said the only reason she was passing me was because of how tall I was. Flunked out of college. Turned out I was dyslexic and had ADD. I took some placement test at a community college and learned I had an IQ in the 98% range. Some therapy and I graduated college and have been very successful. Still cannot spot a word with the letters out of order, but life is good. Would like to see my 4th grade teacher again, but she is probably dead. I am old. On holiday a few years ago, I was sat outside with a friend of mine at the end of the night and a fly was buzzing around our heads. My drunk brain thought I was Bruce Lee, so I reached out to grab it. My friend hadn't even noticed the fly. So all he saw was my arm shoot into the air for no reason. Until I slowly opened up my hand and there it was. He looked me in the eye in complete shock and said, "No one will ever believe you did that." I can sense people approaching without using any of the usual senses, sight, hearing, etc. The only way I can describe it is almost like a static buzzing sensation throughout my entire body. It's diminished since I became an adult, but it still happens sometimes. I try to live by all the rules and live a boring life. But once a month I host an orgy night or a gangbang night, changes every month, at my home. Usually 40 to 50 people attend. Not during corona times, of course. Later next year it will hopefully start all over again. When I was 16, me and my then girlfriend were kidnapped while walking home from school by 2 men. I ended up shooting and killing one with his own gun after they tried to RP her in front of me. I ended up being a local hero at 16, but I have secretly been living with PTSD for 20 years. I am physically unable to float on my own. I can tread water. I can swim. Just not very well. But if I lay back in the water and relax, I'll tip forward until I'm vertical, then sink like the Titanic. Neutral buoyancy is about 2 inches under the surface for me. No one believes me until I get in the pool. I did a lot of drugs and ended up killing my drug dealer accidentally. All before I turned 19. I was notorious in 2 high schools. But because I had a 3.97 and played 3 sports, they could never get me. The police just called to ask me what happened. Didn't even need me to come down to the station. By 21, I was clean except for alcohol and pot. And then got clean from alcohol. Shortly after that,